we go. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to day 4 of CIE 2023. We'll have two really, really great panels for you all today. So, we'll first have our careers in gaming and esports, and next we will have our Overwatch 2 Meet Team India. And then we will head straight into our Overwatch 2 semifinals at about 2:30 Pacific or 5:30 if you're in the East. So, our first panel, of course, is very appropriately named Careers in Esports and Gaming, or Gaming and Esports, where we're going to hear about a variety of careers available in the rapidly growing industry. And we'll also be getting into the details of the various career paths, how individuals got here, and some of the challenges they've had. So, with that being said, again, my name is Jennifer, and I will be your host for this panel. And we'll have our guests introduce themselves. As well as tell us your favorite video game or how you got your gamer tag.
Awesome. So I'll start us off here. My name is Jackson, or my game name as Deprive. I'm originally from Canada, now living in Boston. I'm a graduate from St. Clair College in Windsor, Ontario. And now I'm the marketing and broadcast director at Fisher College here in Boston. I kind of got my start here in the industry overall in general, just from casting, production, all that kind of side of things. But my favorite video game right now has got to be Valorant.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Lucy, and I'm a graduate from Ryerson University, which is now called, I believe, TMU, Toronto Metropolitan University. Um, I'm currently the community manager and events lead for Midnight Society, as well as a tournament organizer for Boom TV. My favorite game at the current moment will likely be Counter Strike, especially after the CS2 release, but Valorant holds a special place in my heart since that's what kickstarted my career in esports.
Hello, so I'm Thomas. I'm a professor in law at the University of Ottawa, Canada, and I'm here because I teach video game law. So I teach lawyers that will probably work in the field of gaming and esport. My favorite game, I would say, it should be Zelda and or League of Legends. I don't consider it as a game per se. I would say it's like more like a discipline. I would say, or like a yeah. We'll talk about this.
Hey everyone, I'm Conor. I go by Coach Alne online. I got my start in esports about 10 years ago. I actually worked with Red Bull hosting an esports event with them. I went on to be an esports coach and start a college program, which is where my gamer tag Coach Alne comes from. From there, I was a social media personality. I was the commissioner of the High School Esports League. And now I'm here because I wrote a very appropriately titled book called 100 Jobs in Esports, partnered with Hitmarker, where we evaluated the esports market and broke it down to give you a reference book on the top jobs within the industry.
Hey everybody, my name is Bernard Mafei. I am also a graduate from St. Clair College Esports Admin Program. Like Jackson, I was a formerly internationally ranked Super Smash Bros. Melee player. I was number 1 in Canada and 51st in the world. So I've been involved in esports for close to 18 years and in the industry for about 10 to 12, working professionally. I currently own an independent consultancy that specializes in esports and gaming, and I help organizations, mostly schools, universities, and colleges, high schools, harness the potential for esports through tailored solutions and strategic guidance.
Awesome. So it is great to meet everyone, and thank you for being here with us. It is really an honor to meet all of you. So we'll go in the same order. Some of you already answered partially this question, but so how did you each get your start in gaming and esports, and kind of what motivated you to continue this career in the field?
Well, for me, it all started with a passion for Call of Duty, wanting to be a player in Call of Duty. Unfortunately, I wasn't good enough at that. So I kind of got into a more management side of things, learning how I can get involved in the back end of esports, whether that be production, whether it be social media management, whether it be running an organization. So that's exactly what I did. I kind of created an organization. I learned to cast from it. I casted some of our own team's games, all this kind of good stuff. And then from there, I actually went on to college, to St. Clair College, like we were just talking about, where I graduated from. And from there, I actually learned how to do a lot more on the broadcast and production side of things. Did pretty well while I was there. Won Student Staff of the Year as my first year as a student there. And then carried on just really grinding out, getting better and improving as a caster, as a producer, all that kind of good stuff. That landed me a job just this past year, starting in September at Fisher College. I've just about almost done my first full year here now, and I look to graduate from Fisher coming up into this upcoming year. Right now at Fisher, I've been doing the marketing director role, broadcast director role, basically making sure that everything runs smoothly on those two ends. But my big start in esports really came from just running an organization, getting hands-on, figuring out what I can do in the back end of esports that isn't actually being a player or a streamer or a YouTuber, a video content creator, anything like that. I kind of wanted to work more on the back end.
So, oh,
Let's go for it.
oh, sorry. Do I continue?
Yeah.
Okay. So, that I actually have a different story because I graduated in 2020 with a bachelor degree in hospitality and tourism management. So right at the start of COVID, I was kind of stuck with no industry to really pursue my per se actual career in at the time. So back in high school, I managed a Valorant server. I ran a bunch of league tournaments and I carried that on to university. And with that background, I was like, okay, maybe esports can actually be a thing since it's all remote and I have more of an idea on how to do this. So that so what I ended up doing, so post graduation, I started applying for a bunch of esports jobs, and space gaming or space productions was the first one to offer me my first paid TO role, which I think is now Space Time Productions. Um, and after that, I kind of gradually just started hanging out with different people from in the industry. I played in tournaments, I hosted tournaments, and I got hired full time by Boom TV for a tournament admin role or tournament organizer role. And I also want to get into Valorant. Valorant coming out during COVID was probably the best thing that happened to me because I ran tournaments in beta. I managed teams, and I also got hired for Team Basilisk as a Valorant manager from their inception till the end, till they left Valorant. And right after that, Midnight Society got announced, and I was fortunate enough to be picked up, and I got to run a bunch of all of their community stuff, and I got to travel. I got to travel and run events in New York, Texas, and LA. And as a Canadian, I never thought this was a job that, could work, but that is kind of how my path slowly changed from esports to gaming, and I still dabble in both. And definitely something that I love, and I don't think I'm going back to the hospitality industry anytime soon.
That is awesome to hear. I think that's definitely one of the positives that came out for the industry with COVID. It seems like a lot of people had time now and patience to kind of say, okay, let me try something. Let me try
Definitely.
to make a career. So Thomas, how did you get into esports law?
I think it was kind of a joke because I was actually recruited to teach environmental law. So I was never supposed to teach this. You have to know that you have very few classes, very few courses on video game law in Canada. I only know one guy in UBC actually doing this for quite a long time. But otherwise, I don't know anything else, nothing in French. So yeah, it was a joke because I was an avid gamer when I was younger, but I stopped when I started university. I did quite a few years of studying, and until the end of my PhD, I didn't touch video games. I still followed the news, but I didn't play. But at the end of the PhD, my partner gave me a Switch and was like, "Okay, now you can start to relax a bit. You can play again." So I played, and I also saw like there is a nice documentary on Netflix about League of Legends, and I was
Yeah.
like amazed. I was like, "What is this?" Like, I felt like I missed like a big social, cultural, economical, legal phenomenon. So I started to read more about it, to study it a bit, and I made a joke with my dean saying, "Oh, we should have a video game law class." And I thought, for the next 5 years. She said, "Yeah, let's do it next session." So I had like a month to
Wow.
prepare, but it was during COVID. It was amazing. I had like 24 students the first year. This year I had 50 students, so it's just growing. Students with a lot of talent. Some I would almost pro level for some of them. So it's quite fascinating to see like that they can be lawyers, they can also be players. There are very few people working in the field, so it's quite nice to be among the first one to tackle some issues and to learn about it. So it's quite good. And Canada is a big place for the video game industry. So it's a lot of potential partner. It's growing so fast. Again, not many people involved, so it's a nice field. So I'm like slowly shifting from environmental law to video game law, which is an issue because video game law is polluting a lot. Video game are polluting a lot. but maybe we'll talk about this later. So yeah, that's the story. So it was a joke, and now I'm like more and more into it, which is great, I guess.
Oh, am I up? Am I good now?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So I don't know how old Thomas is. I'm a little bit of the old guy in the room, but so I got my starts kind of similar to Jackson. So I was in the Midwest in the United States, and Call of Duty was really popular. This is back like 2012, and so I just kind of didn't really know esports was a thing, but kind of got into it that way. And the big turning point was my freshman year in college. I was at the University of Iowa, and we threw a dorm party for, I believe this was the first COD XP event. So it was this big $1 million Call of Duty tournament. And that was the event that just blew my mind, watching these kids, walk away with over 100 grand each. And, everyone in my dorm, like, getting all hyped for this Call of Duty match. And that was a really big moment for me. This is about jobs in esports, so I'm going to kind of tie it into networking here. So at the time, I was in the entrepreneurial program, and we had this program called the Founders Club, and everyone had a sponsor for their spot in there to pay for kind of the stuff we were doing. And my sponsor was actually the guy that owned the Red Bull distribution for the Midwest. So he was the guy that owned the company that did all the distribution. And at the time, they had just signed Nadeshot, and they were starting to get into esports, and they wanted to do a series of events. And so together, I applied to be the one that hosted their events at the University of Iowa. Ended up winning that, and that was my first segue into esports. We rented out like a pizza place that had like an arcade, and we brought out like the Red Bull truck and a bunch of Red Bull, and hosted a pretty cool little event. And from then I was hooked. Unfortunately, they weren't hiring like full TOs at the time, so I made the decision that I probably won't push onto you guys of maxing out some credit cards. I bought a bunch of gaming equipment, and I started hosting events myself. I started traveling around we did initially Call of Duty, Halo, Super Smash Brothers. Then we got into Overwatch when it came out, League of Legends, and that was really how I got hooked. Kind of similar to Jackson, I wasn't ever good enough to go pro, but I knew this is what I loved, so just tried to find a way to make it work.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear. I think it definitely seems like a lot of people in the careers now always are saying, you know what, it was a childhood dream, or I just was in the right place at the right time. So Bernard, though, how has your journey been?
So mine was a little different. As many of you may know, Smash Bros is basically the epitome of grassroots community. So my first tournament in Smash was in 2005. I was a teenager, and the word esports wasn't even a thing. It wasn't around yet. So I was just competing, traveling to the U.S., traveling across Canada, and I did that for years until I decided I wanted it to be a bit more than just going to events and winning money, or coaching, or all the other things that opportunities I was able to get through playing at a high level. So I applied for a job at like a local company called Smilegate. They're actually a Tencent subsidiary, and if you're familiar with Lost Ark, they published that game. So this was before Lost Ark release, but I got a job with them I was basically doing like CSR slash forum moderation slash like ticket stuff. And then I was also doing esports consulting with them. So that was my first brush, like doing events, esports events, or anything competitive for a company. They basically had an FPS game, and now I was in this position, and they were like, use your experience in esports to help us activate our community. So I helped them host their first offline event in Toronto using like my connections with the local venues. And yeah, I basically convinced my employer to spend like tens of thousands to run their first event, and that's when I realized like, oh, like I can MC this event, I can run it, I can delegate, I can use the things that I picked up playing. The thing my parents told me not to do was actually what empowered me to make more money than I'd ever made. And I was like, this is incredible. And then I went to school for it. I got offered a scholarship as a mature student. So I went to St. Clair College, and I think one thing that's different is, so as a mature student, I was not really super into like the whole tier one, like working for a team, traveling, and like I had a fiance. I'm in my 30s. I wanted something a little bit less, for lack of a better word, risky. So that's when I found the educational sector. I got a contract working with Epic Games, teaching teachers Unreal Engine, Twinmotion, and Fortnite Creative all across North America. And that's when I saw like this can be a lot more than what I realized way back when I first picked up a controller. And yeah, I just kind of followed, my love and my passion for games since then, and utilized the skills that I've gained along the way.
Mhm. Yeah, that's sorry. I think that's actually really cool that you were able to carve it out and also like kind of directly say, okay, I don't esports is fast, but not. I don't want that part of that.
Mhm.
But actually, it's really good because it also ties into one of our panels that we'll have in I think a couple days. That'll be esports for all ages and how gaming we can involve that at various stages of our lives. Um, but okay, so Lucy, I'm gonna throw this one to you. So, what was it like going kind of from president of TMU, their esports club, to being a community manager as a in a game studio? Or yeah.
Sure. Sorry about that. I wasn't aware I was unmuted on Discord.
No worries.
So I guess I'll restart. So from between Ryerson and TMU Esports Club and now it's been a bit of a journey. It's not really a direct path, but back in the day in high school, I did actually manage a 1,000-player Minecraft server as a community manager, which kind of grew my knowledge in how to handle players and how to handle the community and grow it. Back when I first joined the TMU Esports Club, it was around 100 people at the time. Which around the time I left, we grew to over 1,000 members in the Discord as well. With that kind of growth, though, there are a lot of issues. As we know, we were understaffed, everything. But with that in mind, working for a startup AAA company right now, it helped a lot of my knowledge where small hiccups will happen, how to handle different situations. It's a little different because the title community manager really doesn't encompass all the roles I do for the company. It's just more of like an umbrella term that is what I am. However, I get to do stuff like events. So my actual passion is in live events or just events in general, like tournaments and such. So Midnight Society has allowed me to manage events like in Texas, in LA. I got to travel to LA for the first time, and New York with three really big hotspots of just gaming and esports I'd never been to until then, and running all these big events from the back end, as well as Boom TV getting me to run Intel Inspires and flying me out to run the stage at DreamHack as well. These are really cool things that I believe like with the history that I had running even simple tournaments, small tournaments at the TMU Esports Club, and small lands in the local internet cafe, all of that kind of gave me more and more experience and my degree itself in events to apply to all of these and allow them to give me the different roles even without a full-fledged resume at
Hmm.
the time. So esports clubs are great. It's a huge time commitment, especially as a president. But if you are able to and it's something you're passionate about, it's a really good place to start because everyone are more willing to give you a hand, especially as a student. And you're able to make mistakes and you're able to learn from those really easily, especially as a student. So that's my long-winded answer.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think we're one of the unique industries that want students in now before they graduate, do these things and get the experience and come out like you'll see like what 20, 21, 22 year olds entering the industry. It's like, "Oh, where did you come from?" "Oh, collegiate school." It's like, "Oh, okay, yeah." That's great. Um, but for Jackson, for you, so what's it been like working for some of the larger companies, and how does that kind of compare to what you're doing at Fisher now?
I like both sides of it. That is one thing that is I really want to say get out of the way for sure. So the working for the larger companies is amazing because of the connections I can make. I can love the traveling, just everything that comes with it. It's just always new experiences. I love being at LAN events in particular. I feel like I'm like at home when I'm at a LAN event. But that being said, what I've worked for, ESCA, Red Bull, Boston Breach, doing a bunch of these things, doing a bunch of events. I've been all the way to Brazil with Red Bull just back in December. So what it's like working for these companies is it's really fast paced. Whenever you're traveling, I felt like, especially during, the playoffs and the collegiate seasons, I'm always trying to make sure games are broadcasted back at Fisher while I'm away working with tournaments here, maybe in Texas, working at tournaments in Brazil, working at tournaments in Columbus, all over, right? So it gets tough when you have so much going on, but it all comes down to making sure you have like a reliable staff underneath me, which is one thing that I have, amazing staff, which is great. We can always make sure we push out the tweets, always push out the broadcasts, all that kind of good stuff. But it's really just comes down to making sure that you're very organized. I think that is one thing that really helps benefit when you start getting a little bit more of a hectic schedule, when you start working for these larger companies. Getting organized, make sure that everything can stay in line. You always have some kind of structure to your day, and making sure that everybody knows what they have to do. But overall, my experience, like just in general, working with these companies, it's been amazing. They've all been super amazing at doing what they do. Red Bull was one in particular that actually stands out to me. I think that they ran the best events outside of majors or tier one events that we see from teams like, or from leagues like ESL, VCT, all that kind of stuff. I think that we do see Red Bull run really, really good events. Red Bull Campus Clutch, from what I went to in Texas and Brazil for the U.S. Nationals and the Worlds event, both really smoothly ran events. And just working for teams like the Boston Breach or the Call of Duty major, just everything runs so smooth at that top end, and it all comes down to being organized. I think that's one of my biggest things, one of the biggest learning points that I've had from working with these bigger companies.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely the campus clutch was impressive this year. And it sucks that Canada lost out to the US, but I guess that's regardless, two
At
wins for
least
NA.
we did get the North America Grand Final matchup. So I mean, I think we'll take what we can get, um, in that manner. And hey, we got the. Unfortunately, we lost the Rocket League one as well. That one was a tough one. But hey, I mean, we'll come back next year fighting for that one.
Yeah, for sure. But on kind of the competitive side, I guess for you, Bernard, how was it like creating your own consulting company? And then how did kind of your experience with the melee scene and everything you've done kind of contribute to that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So basically, what happened was I was working for an educational company that had these massive contracts with like Epic, and also like other companies like Amazon and whatnot. And I was doing these educational deliveries with them. And through the deliveries, I would go to these places and teach people about either esports or Epic Games products. And I found that people would reach out to me afterwards and say, "We loved what you had to say. We've never heard of anything like this. We'd love to like bring this into our classrooms. Can you come again and do it more?" And it started to reach a fever pitch in my inbox and my DMs where I didn't have enough time in my workday to do what people were asking me to do, but I wanted to do that stuff. I was kind of like, tied back by my work responsibilities. So I said, let me just kind of break out on my own and start a company. And now I'm doing incredible things like, I'm like grant writing with some colleagues in the States to do, a really cool esports summer camp featuring the 2K League, two teams, one in Cleveland, one in Toronto. I'm, connecting with TMU, where Lucy's a graduate from, and their Red Bull Studio, gaming hub, and to do events there and stuff. And I think as far as like how it's helped me, I mean the skills it's given me, like resiliency, leadership, teamwork, collaboration, all the things that help like a high level player excel in their world. Are directly translatable to the industry that I'm in now, especially when it comes to like managing my own business. So I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My mom and dad both own their own businesses. They always have. So they came here with nothing and now they have that. So I had strong examples of what I wanted to do. I just didn't know what I wanted to do it in. So I was very fortunate to have already, 14, 15 years of playing this game under my belt. And I was very much like, I don't want it to be something I invested my time in. And I get to be 55 years old, look back and say, oh, I woulda, wish I shoulda, coulda, right? Because it's esports, like many other exciting new things, is a wave and you have to ride it while it's here. And then there could be a point where it's too far gone. So yeah, I'm very fortunate right now to get opportunities working with educators and students, I'm currently with my independent consultancy working with a non-for-profit to package what I do best, like my skill set, into deliverables for youth in the Toronto Catholic District School Board, public school board, multiple boards here. So there's just so much that I was able to do with my gaming experience. I had no idea. But yeah, I just went for it basically.
Hmm. Yeah, it's really good that you kind of created that. I think that's what at least our ecosystem is missing a little bit of, because I think people recognize and see esports now, but they're not, or I guess at the educators level, they're not entirely sure how to get into it because they never were. Um, so they're really looking down to kind of our generation to guide the way in that sense.
For sure.
Um, but to you, Connor, so um, what for people who don't know too much about kind of the scene, what is NACAD and what is it like being their director of success?
Yeah, so NACAD's my newest adventure. So NACAD stands for the National Association of Esports Coaches and Directors. So essentially, what NACAD is the first and only association that is aimed at professional development and networking for esports professionals. So one of the big advantages to having an association like this is the ability to work with anyone and everyone without a direct tie or sell to a certain league or competition or what have you. We're able to kind of carry out conversations and professional development in a very, you know, uh, mutual way. And I think it's really, really important. Um, so yeah, we've been doing that. We do events throughout the year. We'll be doing, well, I think our next event's a few months out, but we do in-person events for networking, which tying it back to careers in esports, like as we go into this, that's going to be my number one push for anyone trying to get in here is networking is the most crucial thing you can possibly do. And it proves with NACAD. So in NACAD, one of the things that we're seeing, which is really cool, is coaches actually being able to evolve in their career. So they start out at a certain school, they move up to a bigger school, or they get a new director position, and you're slowly starting to see this professional development pipeline within collegiate, which is so important to the success of all of this. And that's a lot of that is being facilitated through things like NACAD, where you're building references and other people who can vouch for you, and or relationships with other schools, so that when this person leaves, they might recommend you to replace them. So that's all really, really important. And so I get to serve kind of as the glue to reach out to all our members to get them together and to try to provide that opportunity, through our association.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's really important to have a group like that. I think a lot of people are not ever too sure, though everyone in our industry is always more than willing to help each other out, which I think is really awesome about it. We did have a question submission for you, and somebody in our forum asked, "What inspired you to write the book 100 Jobs in Esports, and why now?"
Oh, it's a great question. So kind of a long-winded answer, but I'll shorten it a little bit. So previously, I was the commissioner of the high school esports league. So it was my job to oversee about 5,000 high schools of competition within esports. And one of the really cool things I got to do was I took 3 months to travel in an RV. We went to 25 high schools, built them esports labs, got to hang out with them. I can go for days about that. But what was really cool is I got to sit down and actually talk to all the students and teachers that were facilitating this. And one of the things that kept coming up is using esports as a career pipeline or career development. But the conversation always stopped there. It was, well, there's jobs in esports. This is more than just playing video games. But there was no real definitive resource for what that industry looks like, how it's shaped, how you even get started, how do you get experience. All of the reasons why we're having this panel, have existed for a while. So that was the first kind of inkling I had. And going back to networking, one of the things I had done previously was I used to actually did a social media campaign for the website called Hitmarker. So Hitmarker, if you don't know, is the number one resource for esports and gaming jobs. And I had previously worked with them. So as I was thinking about transitioning out of the commissioner role, I really wanted to build out a resource that helped answer this question of how do I get a job in esports? And so I reached out to Hitmarker because I had that relationship and worked with them for about 6 months on getting the data and developing, a resource that was going to be, because the other thing I really want to do is make sure that this was all data driven, that this wasn't just me saying this is how I did it, this is how you could do it. I wanted to put together a real reference book so any kid can open it and get an idea of how you can develop a career path in esports, what exists within here. And that's what I think we did. And I'm really proud of it. But mainly to answer the question, it was just talking to all the teachers and students, with all of them having an interest in this industry without really knowing what the next step was.
Hmm. Yeah, it's good to give, I think, even kids an early start of here's it's not just pro player, YouTuber, that's it. Here's everything else you could try to aim for and kind of not get them so boxed in. We are working actually getting back Thomas's feed, but Thomas, if you can answer now, um, so you did answer this a little bit earlier, like what got you into video game law, but what are some of the things you teach in your courses? If you're allowed to release those things, I'm not sure on university rules.
Of course I am. My class belongs to me. I own my class and I own all the material about it. Yeah, no, actually in the semester to introduce you just all the issues like we can see in esport and gaming. Esport is just one part of the class actually, but basically we just try to see like all the legal issues you can have from the creation of a video game to the release and to the moment player will enjoy the game. So there are a lot of legal issues, and it's fascinating because you need to be able to do a lot of different types of law. So we have a lot of intellectual property, a lot of contract law, environmental law for some aspects. So basically, you have all the ownership questions: who own a game? And now with these teams of hundreds of people creating a game, it's such a mess to determine who is the actual owner or the owners. You have also question about the public domain. When is a game falling in the public domain? You have the question of the modding community. Like it's such a common practice now. Who owns the modes? And then you have to go to the license, you have to go to the contract to determine this. It's a lot of debates, a lot of argumentation between the companies and the players. So it's quite interesting. What else do we have? We have environmental issues, of course, because as I told you, video games are a major source of pollution. So, what are the companies doing to tackle this? What are the states doing to tackle this? You have all the issues about addiction. And I'm sure you heard about the case of Fortnite in Quebec. I think there is a similar case coming in British Columbia. It's quite fascinating as well. There was a case in the US, but more will come after the Quebec one, I'm sure. You have all the issue of toxicity, of course. Like, how do you tackle toxicity in games? And then you can look at the strategy from companies. It's very fascinating as well. And when you talk about esport, you have all the question about the regulation of leaks. It's very interesting, and it's amazing because you have like so many type of sports actually. Like Lucy was talking about the club, and what is amazing with the esport club is that it's not a club like any other because you have so many departments in this club. That's why it's such like a big task to take on. And it's the same for the leagues. You can study like so many different leagues and look at the regulation, how it works. And of course, you have all the issues of the contract law with players. And this is related to some jobs, like being an agent, being a lawyer for players. It's such a domain that is very small right now, but it should grow a lot. We talked this year with a pro player, and I was amazed to see that he had no agent or no lawyers looking at the contract. So he signed something like a 50 pages contract by himself. And of course, some of the articles were not good. But I mean, yeah. So yeah, that's basically like the type of issue we can look at. You can also look at the tax law if you want to see, like for instance, how a country like Canada is attracting a lot of video game companies. Why? You have all the issue about localization of games like French, English, other languages. Is it mandatory or not? And finally, maybe like the protection of consumers, like the classification of games, censorship of games. Why? I mean, it's all these kind of questions that we studied during the class. So it's quite interesting and quite a lot.
Yes, there's always a lot of depth with such a intersectional industry, and I know I think it's really important, especially for young players specifically, because they're young, they don't know too much. Um, not to be not trying to be rude or anything like that. But what are some of the key kind of legal considerations you'd recommend for younger players or content creators looking to make sure that they are not putting themselves in a disadvantageous position?
Oh, first, read every document. Read. I know it's boring, and lawyers, we are the worst for this because we don't read contracts. We sign. We are like, okay, we'll see when there is a conflict, but like, read what you sign, and l- like, try to get help from people. Like, even if it's people like you, like other streamers, other content people creating content, and compare. Because sometimes, we feel like it's a secret, we should not share it because it's a negotiation bargain, blah blah blah. But like, it's always better to compare, to know what other people get. And yeah, and then you are stronger when you are several, and you can say, oh, you gave this to someone, like, why do I don't get the same? So this, and ask professionals, like either an agent or lawyer, because it's a lot at stake. And some people have a lot of experience in other domain, like sport, for instance, and so they can help you to get the best of what you can get. And another advice, but I mean, it's more like a long term. It's all the issue of the creation of unions for players and for streamers. I think it's starting. I didn't check. I should have checked more in depth for the League of Legends, because I think it's starting, like, to get an union for players, and it's very important because then you have more power against the editor or the developer of a game. So it's another advice, I guess. Yeah, but read everything. Read the character. Ask them to change the contract, because now there is a tendency of giving you a contract and saying, like, you cannot negotiate it. You have to sign this. It's a contract. You can negotiate it. If you're not happy, you don't have to sign it. So yeah, that would be the main advice for this.
Mhm. Yeah, read things, definitely read through things, um, and kind of be prepared to fight and advocate for yourself. I think it's really important. I think something that not a lot of people in their 20s or even older kind of learn to do for themselves. But we did touch on this earlier, and we also did have a form submission on this. So this is open to anybody to answer. Um, Somebody says, quote, how do I network with people in esports? I feel like I'm totally out of league. I'm just some random student. Um, and what do I do?
I
I
can,
can
I
talk
can,
about it if no one was. Oh
uh,
no, no, go for it, Connor. After you, sir.
all right. I'll put the bar up here so then you can top it. Um, So it's a great question because, as I've mentioned in this whole time, networking is like so incredibly crucial. It's how I've gotten every opportunity I've ever gotten. And one of the most powerful things that you can do, especially this day and age, is using your social media correctly in this fashion. So one of the, I think, best pieces of specific advice I could give you is the more you can understand the path that you want to go to, the easier this is going to be. For example, let's say you want to become a social media manager. One of the greatest things that you can do right now as a student is starting to develop relationships with people who are currently social media managers. Let's say you want to work for a top, org or whatever. You can go on Twitter. It's so easy to find who works for orgs. If you don't know who the social media manager is, you can basically just search it in the bar. You'll find who they are, follow every single one of them, and then you're not going to spam them. But as they tweet, like it, engage, slowly kind of get, they're like, oh, hey, look, I got a fan or whatever. And over time, you can ask them questions. If they post something, you can kind of engage with it. If you do that while you're a student, time is your advantage because you can start, if you're a freshman, sophomore, whatever, you might not be looking for a job until your senior year or maybe an internship junior year. So you can spend 6 months never asking anything of them, just liking their tweets and maybe responding to some of them. I promise you, if you do that for a while, they're going to know who you are. If you go to an event, you'll be able to spot them and say hi or whatever. And then when they do have an opportunity, whether they're posting about an internship, an opportunity, or just when you're ready to enter the field, you can then reach out to them. As a college student, they will pretty much always answer your emails or answer your questions. Like, that's another advantage of a college student, that people love helping college students, so take advantage of that. And that's going to be your number one way to land that first job after college. So I'll set the bar there. Go ahead.
So, a common thing I think people experience, especially this industry, is not knowing enough people, or maybe not knowing the right people, or maybe you go to an event. This actually happened at the XP Game Development Expo where I met Lucy in January, where I actually went by myself and I just happened to meet people while I was there, but I didn't have a plan to. I think this is my method at least. First, attend events. go to as many as possible. If you see something in that's like within driving or transit distance, you should go, and you should definitely challenge yourself to go alone, because showing up is half the battle. You're not going to be able to take advantage of opportunities or meet people that can make a difference in your journey unless you're actually standing in front of them sometimes. And then the next thing is, maybe now you're finding yourself in these scenarios where like you know who you want to talk to, you know what you want to say, but maybe you're scared. So I would say the next challenge is to start conversations with the people you genuinely want to connect with. So um, I think for me, when I go to an event, I don't want to regret having gone out there, maybe paid for a ticket or something, experienced all this cool stuff, and then left without doing my due diligence. So I think, showing up and then taking advantage of the fact that you're there are two very important things, especially if you're scared. I mean, we're all human, but the things that you fear, they're genuinely worth running towards. You're scared of them for a reason, and what's on the other side of that's going to be super beneficial. And then some really like casual advice would be join online communities, of course, so Twitter and Discord, and locally. So if you have a gaming club at your school, which most schools do, if not, go to the school that has one that's closest to you. It doesn't have to be at the school you go to. Just get involved with the community of people, because remember, any free open gaming community, what are they trying to do? Gain members. They're not going to turn you away, right? Show up and show that you care, and that's a great way to start meeting people, and then maybe translate that to something more. And then grow your professional platform. So LinkedIn is something I invested in a lot more after graduating. I didn't really use it at all before, but I've gotten so many opportunities, DMs, panels like this. Now that I have my own business, there have been opportunities that people have reached out to me because of the LinkedIn network that I have. So I think all of these in tandem, maybe picking your top 3 and 4 ways and sticking them out for a few months, you start to notice a difference if you make an effort.
Well, that's
Yeah,
perfect too, because if you're scared of your advice of going to events alone is like really great. And if you're scared to do that or meet people, if you can combine kind of the Twitter advice with the in-person advice, you will have not only do people love talk about the events they're going to go to, so you'll probably see some people on Twitter that you're like, hey, I could run into them or like try to
That's what
remember their
happened.
face.
Literally
Uh,
happened to me. Yeah.
is perfect. And if you've been following them or you'll have some question for them or something to talk about. It's not just going to be awkward and go like, oh, hey, I follow you. Like you'll actually know something about them to be able to talk about it. And people, if you can go up to someone and be like, hey, I follow you on Twitter and ask them a question, they love that. You gotta
That's a
egos are such a real thing and people love that stuff.
Mhm.
But it's
yeah.
cyclical, right? It's exactly what you said. It's like doing one kind of empowers the others. So
I
Yeah,
was
and
exactly going to say the exact same thing there as well, with you, Bernard, on that one. Is just going to the events or alone are so big, because what's common if you're like going to events with 2 or 3 other people with you, you're common to just kind of stay in that circle, chat among your friends, and you don't get as many experiences chatting with new people, and that's kind of the goal at the end of the day. One more final thing for this is I think that one thing that is really good is also just engaging in like industry leaders like Twitter posts and whatnot. If you can get in replies, just start discussions with people on social media as well. It's one way that you can build connections while also learning to improve yourself in that manner.
maybe like I'm talking only from the legal perspective because like people who wants to work in this field are very few and there is no career path to go there like very clear. But I always tell my students first try it. You have to try. You have to send letters to show interest. And as Conor said, when a student is showing interest, usually people are so willing to help, to share, maybe get an invitation to the law firm or to the studio to meet people because there are very few people doing this. So it's one thing. And I also tell them because I told you I have some students that have a very high level for some games. I tell them don't hide this, show them, tell them what you did like during the past 10, 15 years and tell them like show them the value of it. Of course some people won't understand very fast, but for me when I see like a student who is a master level in League of Legends, I'm like, okay, I know what it means, I know what is the proportion of the players, so just put this in your CV. So in general, if you have a portfolio of experiences, put it in your CV, like put it out there because people will notice it at some point, and it shows great qualities. Like it shows like you are bright. It shows that you are dedicated, skills. So it's some of the skills that you will find with a sport athlete. So it's for some employers, it's they know what it means.
Hmm.
I had one last thing to add to that, just quickly, I guess, is a lot of us came from the same position that these students are in, like you guys are in as students. So we feel for you. Like we know the struggles of how hard it is to reach out to industry leaders and just people that, you want to learn from. And there's like most of the people in the industry right now will not turn you away, regardless of like who you are. They, if you want to learn, all of us want to help because a lot of us have been in your shoes before, where we're like, hey, we want to step in industry. Where do we go? Even a question is like, hey, I want to learn about social media. How did you get into social media? What are like the good steps I can take? And they can ask you. They can ask about you a little bit too. And also having like some way to contact you, whether Twitter or LinkedIn or even a business card, or people use QR codes these days. I think for the most recent one where I met Bernard, everyone was sharing their LinkedIn codes, which was a first for me. I've never actually had to scan LinkedIn codes before, but I think that's
QR
like the
code.
new norm. Yeah, LinkedIn QR codes are like the new
Yeah.
norm. But having something that is recognizable, like for me, I always wear this hood, even like especially in panels, and I have it on my Discord and also my business cards. It's kind of like a weird identifier that people do real like recognize you. It's like a brand thing as well, on the sign. So things like that. Be unique, be yourself. Just there's no need to be someone you're not in this industry because everyone has a place.
Mhm. Yeah, that's definitely some really good advice. It's actually really cool that an industry is so welcoming. And yes, we're competition, but we still help our competition, and it's great. So last couple questions. We have another form submission, and this reads: I'm a graphic designer, and I used to play in the tier two, tier three scene for a game. They never mentioned the game, by the way. But I quit because I didn't feel like I fit in. So it's been a few years now, and I want to come back. But I was wondering what the work culture and environment is like for everybody because I'm still nervous.
Mhm.
That's a really tough question, actually. I just to start it off. It's something that like it's kind of every work, every culture, every business. I feel like has their own different kind of culture to it, and I think that every community has their own culture to it. For example, the Call of Duty and League of Legends community are very different from each other. In my own personal perspective, so I think that it really does come down to just maybe get involved a little bit here in that community, see kind of I put like a little bit of a feeler on how that community exactly runs itself and how it acts and how that community just is overall. That's my only really advice I feel like coming into this direction. In the general workplace environment that I feel like we experience here today, it's pretty standard. It's kind of like I feel like a business casual kind of area of esports is what it is you everyone does focus on their projects, everyone does make sure everything gets done in time, but at the same time everyone does also make sure that there is some casual aspect to it to be able to just connect with other people.
Mm.
Can I ask a question, real quick? Was the question that was asked to us, was it about like wanting to play again or like work in the industry? And was it a woman that asked the question?
Um, so they didn't leave their gender,
Okay,
um,
I did then.
but I believe they want to do something in graphic design.
Okay,
So
so
not
and
the
then
pro play anymore.
but they said they were uncomfortable, or what was it that like they played
Uh,
they fell out of it and then wanted to come back in?
yeah, so this person used to play in tier two and tier three,
Yeah,
but quit because they didn't feel like they fit in.
they fit in.
Um,
Okay,
so
so
they want to come
so
back. Sorry,
an
continue.
interesting thing is that no, no, you're good. It's my fault. Interesting thing is that a lot of I'm talking from the school side now. They're really trying to invest more in like EDI. So I went to Mohawk about 2 weeks ago on a diversity in gaming panel, and there was the person that's running the she's the dean of of the creative school that's running the video game design program. She has a PhD in women's studies, and she's trying to bring EDI in from like the back end. And I think a lot of organizations are trying to like push that. First of all, we recognize that the esports is not the most diverse place. I think the only like women esports owner is Nicole Point Jamison, right, of EG. I think she's still the only one as far as I know, and I know of XSET. I forget her name, Erin Ashley Simon, I think. So there's like a lot of work I think that the esports, not just the competitive side but also the professional side needs to do in terms of like not mirroring the mistakes that were made in traditional sports where they're like heavily male dominated and things like that. So as far as how to feel more comfortable, I think A is like the internet's a really powerful tool. There's tons of now social groups, organizations, non for profits that like are helping support people from all kinds of diverse backgrounds to get into the scene in any capacity the way you want to. And you can do that by finding camaraderie from people like you. So finding people that match your energy, that are maybe struggling the same way that you are, and then like, stronger together, as somebody on the panel said earlier. And I think that's like it is a tough ask, but things are definitely better than they were a few years ago. So if this person experienced something that made them uncomfortable then, my hope is that now with like more resources, more people, more energy towards this side of it, their experience will be better. But I think it starts with like finding a community, grassroots or non or otherwise, that can maybe bring you into the loop in a more comfortable way.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think oh, one more thing. Sorry, can I add one?
Yeah, go
Yeah.
for it.
So I feel like playing in tier 2, tier 3, because I did was a manager for tier 2, tier 3 Valorant for a while. There's a quite a big difference as a player in the esports scene, like as a player versus being someone who works as like a graphic designer or someone who works in it. um I think the workplace aspect is a lot more accepting, as well as like the fact that a lot of the roles are remote. So if gender is a reason for it, it is not as like high of a reason, since it's not like in an actual physical workplace. Especially for graphic designers, it's more of what your portfolio is and what your work is versus, you know, anything outside of it. It's like if you deliver on what you need to do. There are a lot more higher demands for graphic designers these days too. Like graphic designers that are knowledgeable about the game or the work that they're looking to hire for. So I think it's a really good time to go back in and do more research on multiple games, if possible, or multiple different esports areas that they're interested in. I will say it's completely different than being a player when you're working as like a working person versus a player in the industry.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really insightful actually to see that there we can hear from somebody who has that experience, that there is a difference. I think I said earlier in one of our panels, one of the ways, kind of one of the workarounds, if you're having some like issues of gender or what it may be, is and it kind of ties back to networking. Is I think Valkyrie, one of her editors or like person who does like little short animated videos for her, was doing them, tagged her, and then she was like, "Hey, can I hire you?" And so there was a whole process behind that, but it was like, oh, you don't have to go even the traditional route of let me apply to a company. It's just let me create content on Twitter. Um, but we are headed to about the end of our panel. Um, so I have one last question for everybody, and if you want to answer it, you can. What is so? There's actually two questions you can answer. Pick one, doesn't matter. So, what has been the most exciting part of your career so far? Or is there any advice you'd like to give to people looking for a career in esports or gaming or adjacent industries?
I can start us off with that one. I feel like one of the most exciting parts of my career so far has been just moving to a new country in general and being able to experience something completely new in that aspect. Kind of just building up a whole kind of, it's like almost like a new life over here. And it's like all esports based almost because it's really cool because like, everybody I'm around every day at the college, friends, roommates, everything, events, my work, everything works around esports at the end of the day, and that has been one of the most exciting experiences. Looking back 5-6 years ago, being a freshman sophomore in high school, you don't really think every day that you are going, maybe this will work out, and that's what you're still going to be doing 5-6 years later, and I still am right now, and it looks to be a pretty bright future ahead of me. So that has been probably one of the most exciting parts I've had personally, just working with these companies, working with Fisher, all of this in general. It's been amazing in that manner. But in general, it's been amazing also being on these panels today. So I just want to say thank you for everybody who tuned in and listened to what we had to say from my end. But I do really appreciate it. And I'll pass it off now to Lucy.
Could you reply or could you ask the question again? Sorry, as this
Yeah,
is a closing statement.
no worries. So, what's been the most exciting part of your career, or is there any advice you could give to people looking to get into esports, gaming, or adjacent industries?
The most exciting part was when my boss said I am able to run an event in New York and LA. was probably by far the highlight, because that is where my passion is in events, and being able to do live events in American cities as a Canadian was probably where I was like, dang, this is like a dream come true, because I didn't think any company will fly a Canadian out to an American location to run an event, as it is much more costly to hire a Canadian than it is American. So that's definitely the highlights of my career so far, is being able to run these events, meet all the people, work with Optic and Phase. Those have been like definitely all the highlights. And the suggestions I have is make friends wherever you go. Like whatever you do, if you're a competitor, if you're a player, the first time I met one of my coworkers that helped me get into Boom and AVGL was he worked for Microsoft at the time, and I played in a Microsoft East versus West League of Legends tournament, and I think we ended up winning, but because we went along so far in the process, I ended up talking to the TOs a lot, being like, hey, so what do you guys do for Microsoft? What is this like? Are there any job openings? How do I get into a position like this? This is something I want to do. And then Microsoft shut off all their offices for when COVID happened, and then they migrated to a different company, and we kept in touch. And behold, they sent me a job application like, "Hey, we're hiring right now. Maybe you want to fill it out and see if my boss likes you." And that also helped me get into AVGL, which got me into Boom TV. So don't, always just make friends. Whatever you do, if you're like, hey, I'm interested in that, ask questions. What are they going to say? No. All they can say is like, oh, I don't have time to answer right now. But most of the time, they'll be like, send me the question. I'll reply when I can. Or if you have any questions, message me on Twitter, message me on LinkedIn. And what you get is another connection, more information that you want to know about, and perhaps a new friend.
Yeah, that is some really good advice. Then we'll throw it to Connor next.
Cool. I'll try to go quick because I know we're out of time. So one of the things you need to understand with esports is it's incredibly competitive. There are way more people who want the jobs than the people who get the jobs, and that's just the reality of it. So there's two things that you can do to really try to prepare yourself for that. So the first one I always tell kids is your social media is now the new cover letter. Like if you are starting to try to get into this, social media is the first step. Everyone looks at social media, everyone finds people on social media, and once you apply, I guarantee people are looking you up. So treat social media like your cover letter. The best way to do this is just document what you're doing. Post pictures of when you're doing events, when you're working on things. Like your portfolio should be transparent throughout your timeline. I want to see you improving and working towards something. That's going to make me as a hire way more likely to look for you for the position. So that one's really important. And I'm blanking on the second one, so I'll just go ahead and pass it.
I mean, that was such good advice that it's like it's almost worth 3, right?
I'll take that. Yeah,
So,
that's why I
such good
can't do the
advice.
other one. I just can't top it.
Such a good point.
Bernard or
Doc,
Thomas, you have
yeah,
any?
Dr. Burelli, feel free to go ahead. I'll go last.
Okay. No, in terms of advice, I think everything has been said. Like, don't be scared. Yeah, it's competitive, but don't be scared and try it, because you never know like what people say. Even me, like when I reach out to professionals, I'm like they won't answer me, and they do, and then like we have a great discussion. So in terms of highlights, I would say that in my case, the best is to come, because it's like 4 years we are fighting to get an esports space at U Ottawa. We heard about St. Clair. I think it's the exception in Canada, and it's an amazing space you have. But we are working for this, so it's still a work in progress. It's very hard to convince people that it's interesting, that it has value. But it's moving forward. But maybe one highlight we had very recently is that we got 50,000 from the Ontario government for scholarship for students. So we gave 10 scholarship already, and we still have 10 to give next year. So as an educator, I was very happy to be able to give this to students who wants to go with a career in esport and gaming. So that's what a nice highlight for on the road to something bigger, I hope.
Mhm. Yes, that Ontario
Um,
scholarship is a game changer. Anyways, go for it, Bernard.
I'll be quick as well. So my highlight was I was doing a session on Unreal Engine for about 35 teachers in North Carolina. It was the first time I traveled with like gaming, esports, money, or support. And I introduced myself in my past, and then teachers came up to me after the session and said, I'm so sorry. Like my kid plays games, and I thought it was a waste of time, but like I guess it's not, right? Because like you're teaching us now. So yeah, proof basically that like my parents were wrong, the naysayers were wrong, and that I am a living example of a pipeline that exists to take what you love and turn, uh, turn it into something more. And then advice, I have four really easy steps. I tell this to pretty much anyone. First is define your path. I think it's way easier to hit the place you want to get to if you know what you're aiming for, right? So don't just be like, I want to do esports. What in esports do you want to do? Use ChatGPT. There's a million ways that you can find that answer. So define your path, and then like Connor said, you use social media, build a portfolio of work through consistent engagement. You have to do stuff, right? The more stuff you do, the more stuff will open up for you. Network is number three, and then stay informed. So esports is always changing, from publisher side to competitive side, like no matter what it is. So, keep your knowledge up. So that's it. Oh, and thanks for having me on. It was a pleasure to talk to all of you, all such diverse backgrounds, and yeah, it was a blast.
Awesome. Okay, so that wraps up our Careers in Esports panel. Thank you, Jackson, Lucy, Thomas, Connor, and Bernard for being here speaking with us. We are 1 minute over time, but I hope that is okay. Up next, we'll be back in about a half hour for our next panel, and that will be our Meet Team India for Overwatch 2. So we'll see you then. Thank you.
Thank you.